You've been living inside a lie that even your soul doesn't fully remember. From birth, the boundaries of your mind have been shaped not by truth, but by omission, deliberate silence wrapped in ritual, routine, and repetition. You were never taught how reality works. You were taught how to exist inside someone else's version of it. But there was someone who left behind the real blueprint, coded in symbols, hidden in stone, guarded by time. Thoth, not a myth, not a god in the way you were told. A master of consciousness who understood death, time, energy, and the soul like we understand gravity. His teachings weren't stories, they were systems. What you're about to see isn't mysticism, it's instruction. And if you truly absorb it, you'll never see the world, or yourself, the same way again. Most people never read the Emerald Tablets. They skim quotes, repost fragments, maybe tattoo a line or two, but they never go deep enough to decode the structure inside. That's not their fault. The tablets weren't written for casual reading. They're encrypted, not with ciphers or codes, but with language designed to repel the unready. The deeper truths are wrapped in metaphor, vibration, and geometric logic. But here's what nobody tells you. Once you understand how to read them, not literally, but dimensionally, they stop sounding poetic and start sounding like a manual, because that's what they are. A metaphysical operations manual. The Emerald Tablets describe a model of reality that doesn't begin with matter. It begins with frequency. Everything is vibration, and all vibration contains intelligence. This isn't philosophy. This is structure. The first tablet tells you outright, man is in the process of becoming. Not born perfect, not born sinful, born as a system still loading, a soul that's fragmented, encoded into flesh, navigating through dimensions of density. And yet, we're not left to stumble blindly. The tablets detail the path forward, but only if you know how to follow symbols instead of sentences. When Thoth speaks of light, he doesn't mean sunshine or moral goodness. He means information, consciousness, awareness that expands and self-generates. And darkness isn't just evil, it's entropy, stagnation, unconsciousness. This duality isn't religious, it's mathematical. The more conscious a being becomes, the more it moves toward light, and the less it decays. Death, in this system, is not an end. It's a checkpoint, a recalibration, a reset designed to prompt growth, not finality. The halls of Amenti, often mistaken for some mythic underworld, are real, but not in the way Hollywood imagines. They're dimensional holding fields, spaces where soul fragments pause between incarnations to integrate and choose new lessons. So why was this encrypted? Why didn't Thoth just say it all plainly? Because knowledge is power, and power, in the wrong hands, leads to collapse. The tablets were designed to repel the unready, to filter access through resonance. If your mind isn't prepared to hold these truths, they won't make sense to you. They'll feel like riddles. But if you've been feeling like reality is hollow, like there's more behind the curtain, and you're ready to step through, then suddenly, these texts don't feel ancient. They feel alive and personal, because they are. One of the most misunderstood lines is this: "Seek ye the path to the stars, and find the portals to other dimensions." People treat it like a myth, like a metaphor, but it's not. Thoth is being literal. There are frequency gates embedded into this reality, what we might call stargates, or wormholes, accessible not through machines, but through conscious calibration, stillness, intention, vibration. This is why meditation isn't relaxation, it's navigation. The stiller your energy, the more aligned your frequency, the more reality begins to bend around you. That's not magic, it's mechanics. Some insights from these texts are too direct to share here. If you're ready, join the Insights Academy, our free newsletter, for uncensored breakdowns and a free digital copy of the Kybalion. Links in the description. The tablets also talk about breaking the cycle, not in a poetic, emotional way, but in a structural, mechanical one. The cycle is reincarnation, but not as karma or punishment. It's cause and effect across densities. If your frequency stays below a certain threshold, you re-enter. If you align with higher law, you graduate. But that law isn't moral, it's vibrational. It's rhythm, polarity, and harmony. This is why Thoth calls them laws, not suggestions. They're not spiritual fluff, they're architecture. You don't obey them because you're told to. You align with them because your soul literally can't evolve without doing so. There's one more thing most people miss. The tablets don't just describe the outer world. They describe you. Your body is a temple. Your cells are record keepers. Your blood is coded light. And the pineal gland, the so-called third eye, is not a symbol. It's a literal access point to higher dimensional information. A gateway, a receiver. Once activated, it starts pulling information directly from the field, bypassing language entirely. Intuition, downloads, knowing. That's why every ancient culture protected the pineal, and why modern systems attack it. Through chemicals, distraction, fluoride, overstimulation. Because once you can see beyond language, the programming stops working. So if you came here expecting vague mysticism, you're in the wrong place. This isn't abstract. This is a system, a detailed one. And once you understand how to read it, you won't need a guru or a priest. You'll realize Thoth didn't come to be worshipped. He came to remind you of something you already knew, but forgot under the weight of this world. You've been told that Thoth was a god, an ibis-headed figure from Egyptian mythology, the scribe of the gods, a symbol of wisdom. That version is watered down, sanitized. It's a remnant of a truth too large to be explained by temples or statues. Thoth wasn't a god. He was a consciousness, ancient, evolving, transcending form and function. The idea of worshipping him would have been absurd to him. He didn't want followers. He wanted initiates, beings who remembered. Because Thoth wasn't just one man. He was a role, inhabited by an intelligence that transcended linear existence. The teachings speak of incarnations not as singular lifetimes, but as vessels. Hermes Trismegistus, Enoch, Metatron. Different names. Same current. Same stream of consciousness flowing through different ages. Coded in different languages. Adapted for different minds. Thoth wasn't bound to one body, one culture, or even one planet. In the tablets, he refers to himself as one who walks among men but is not of them. That's not poetic flair. That's a dimensional description. His presence wasn't local, it was multidimensional. Meaning, he could move in and out of densities, altering his form, shifting his expression, accessing time the way we access memory. When he says he descended from Atlantis to Egypt, he's not talking about geography. He's describing a vibrational descent from a higher frequency civilization to a lower one, from knowing into remembering, from structure into chaos. Atlantis, as he describes it, wasn't a mythic island, but a civilization functioning on laws we've forgotten, laws of sound, light, thought, and sacred geometry. When Atlantis fell, it wasn't because of war or weather. It was because its citizens fell out of alignment with the universal laws. Decay followed. Systems broke down. And those who remembered, like Thoth, left with the intention to seed the next cycle of consciousness elsewhere. Egypt was one of those places. Not because of its location, but because of its energy lines, its geometry, its role in the earth grid. The pyramids weren't built for burials. They were built as transmitters, stabilizers, resonance chambers, machines aligned with celestial bodies and vibrational harmonics. Thoth designed them not to impress kings, but to preserve knowledge through vibration. A library written in stone, sound, and shadow. This is why Thoth was called the scribe. Not because he wrote down history, but because he encoded reality. He knew how to crystallize knowledge in form, how to trap frequency inside symbol, how to encode universal truth into visual structure. He was less of a writer and more of a programmer, and his code was consciousness itself. When you read the Emerald Tablets, or the Kybalion, or the Hermetic texts, you're not just reading information, you're syncing with his field. His intention is still embedded in the frequency of the words. That's why you feel something shift when you engage with them deeply. That's not a coincidence. That's design. The question is, where is Thoth now? And the answer is, not gone, just veiled. You don't lose a consciousness like that. It recycles, re-emerges, adapts. Not as a man in robes, but as systems of knowledge, flashes of insight, dreams you can't explain, inner truths you never learned but somehow always knew. Thoth appears where memory begins to return, where structure re-emerges out of chaos. And if you're watching this, that's not random. It's resonance. You're syncing with a current that has been looping through humanity for tens of thousands of years. A current that doesn't care about titles or temples, but about readiness. He said it clearly. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. What he didn't say, but implied, is that the teacher might not come as a person. It might come as a shift, a breakdown, a question you can't stop asking, or a message like this, showing up on your screen at the exact moment your soul decided to remember. Thoth isn't trying to be found. He's waiting for you to stop looking outside. Because the version of him you're meant to meet isn't walking in sandals under the Egyptian sun. It's encoded in the silence between your thoughts, waiting to reawaken. You've been told your soul is one thing, singular, mysterious, invisible. But Thoth taught something far more structured, far more exact. Your soul isn't one thing. It's a layered mechanism, an energy system encoded with memory, purpose, and potential. It's not just light, it's intelligence in motion, and understanding it doesn't require belief. It requires observation. What you call emotions, instincts, intuition, these aren't spiritual fluff. They're feedback systems. Your soul isn't some ghost inside you. It's the entire framework of you, layered over lifetimes, embedded in fields, split across densities. And until you understand its mechanics, you're just guessing your way through existence. According to Thoth, the soul has structure. The Ka, the Ba, the Khat, the Sahu, each layer serving a different function, each bound to a specific density of reality. The K is your vital energy. It holds your life force, your motion, your will to act. The Ba is your personality, the part that moves between realms, the expression of self that reincarnates with variation. The Khat is the physical body, the shell, the anchor, and the Sahu is the spirit body, formed only through conscious alignment, refined over many lives. These aren't metaphors. These are operational components of your being. And just like a machine needs all its parts to run well, your soul needs all these aspects integrated, aligned, functioning. But most people live fractured, unaware that they've lost connection to pieces of themselves that were never meant to be discarded. Trauma isn't just emotional pain, it's fragmentation. Every time you suppress your truth, betray your intuition, deny your calling, you fracture. Parts of your energy pull away. And over lifetimes, those fractures stack. That's why some people are born feeling incomplete, not broken, just scattered. What Thoth taught is that these soul fragments aren't lost, they're dormant, waiting to be reintegrated. But that reintegration doesn't happen through affirmations or blind positivity. It happens through self-awareness, shadow work, and vibrational alignment with universal law. You don't heal by escaping pain. You heal by becoming aware of its purpose. Pain isn't a punishment, it's a signal, a messenger, a key. Reincarnation, as Thoth describes it, isn't about karma in the moral sense. It's not a celestial scoreboard keeping track of your mistakes. It's about momentum. Your frequency at the time of death determines your next entry point. If you die in confusion, denial, or resistance, you re-enter at that same vibrational level. Not as punishment, but because your energy has to resolve what it couldn't integrate. But if you die in awareness, clarity, alignment, you enter the next cycle with greater access. Not just to memory, but to function. This is how evolution works. not through external achievement, but through internal coherence. And this is where the illusion of death falls apart. Thoth makes it clear, death is not an end. It's a transition between bandwidths of perception. What you call the afterlife isn't a place. It's a frequency band, a layer of the same system, operating at a different speed. The soul never dies. It just changes vibration, like a radio tuning to another station. And if you're not aware of the tuner, you just think the music stops. But it doesn't. It shifts, continues, evolves. This is why the ancient initiates prepared for death every day, not because they feared it, but because they wanted to die consciously. They practiced alignment, not out of piety, but out of technical necessity. They knew that the architecture of the soul determines the trajectory of the self after this life ends, and they didn't leave it to chance. Neither did Thoth. That's why he gave us the instructions, not to worship, but to follow, not to theorize, but to apply. You weren't meant to wander through this life numb and fragmented. You were meant to remember the mechanics of your own existence, and every flash of intuition, every unexplained emotion, every synchronicity, it's your soul sending you signals, reminding you there's a deeper system behind your personality, one that doesn't care about trends or timelines, but about evolution, your evolution. The soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks coherence. And Thoth didn't teach us how to pray. He taught us how to remember what we are. There are laws governing this universe that don't care what you believe. You don't get to bypass them by ignoring them, and you can't pray your way around them. They don't punish, they respond. That's the difference. What Thoth laid out wasn't religion, it was physics, but not the kind you learned in school, not mechanical, not material, energetic, consciousness-based. And the most important thing he ever said about these laws was this: alignment isn't a choice, it's a necessity. You either align and ascend, or resist and decay. And that's not philosophy. That's how the structure works. The so-called laws of the universe, polarity, rhythm, vibration, cause and effect, these are not abstract ideas. They're the scaffolding of reality. The Kybalion touches them, sure. Hermeticism summarizes them, but Thoth embedded them deeper. To him, these laws weren't just truths to understand, they were forces to master. Imagine trying to build a house without understanding gravity. Now imagine trying to build a soul without understanding these laws. That's what most people are doing. Living out their lives in constant reaction, stuck in loops, caught in rhythms they didn't even notice were running them. Polarity means that everything has its opposite, and that both ends are the same thing, expressed at different intensities. Love and hate, same spectrum. Fear and courage, same scale. The power isn't in choosing one over the other. The power is in learning to transmute, to raise the frequency from one end of the pole to the other. This is why Thoth's teachings focus so much on mastery, not denial. Don't pretend you don't feel fear. Learn to shift it into clarity. Don't repress anger. Transmute it into action. The law doesn't demand purity. It demands awareness. Rhythm governs everything. Every high has a low. Every expansion has a contraction. Life moves like a pendulum. But the initiate learns how to anchor at the center, not to escape the swing, but to master the rhythm. When you're unaware, life feels like chaos, ups and downs without explanation. But when you start observing, really observing, you realize everything moves in cycles. Emotional cycles, energetic cycles. Even the people you attract into your life are part of cycles reflecting your current state of resonance. It's all precise, down to the second, down to the breath. Cause and effect is where most people get stuck. They think bad things happen to good people randomly. They don't. The universe isn't sentimental, it's responsive. Everything you experience is an echo of something you've set in motion. Maybe not in this life, maybe not even in this dimension, but the law never skips a beat. When you act in alignment, you don't need guarantees. You know what you're creating because you know what you're sending. When you don't, You blame chance, fate, or other people. But the law doesn't care about blame. It only mirrors. Balance isn't about being neutral. It's about being aware of both poles and choosing where to stand. Thoth spoke constantly of balance, not because he was advocating peace and quiet, but because he understood the consequences of imbalance. When you ignore rhythm, you burn out. When you resist polarity, you fracture. When you deny cause and effect, you become a victim of your own unconscious actions. Every time you align with truth, the system responds by lifting you. Every time you fake it, force it, or avoid it, the system reacts by compressing you. That compression is what you feel when your life feels tight, when you can't breathe, when everything feels like it's closing in. That's not life attacking you. That's life reflecting you. And here's the part that never gets said. These laws are not optional. You're not punished for breaking them. You're punished by breaking them. Just like jumping off a cliff isn't punished by gravity, it's the law itself responding to your movement. Same with the law of vibration. If your dominant frequency is guilt, you will attract cycles that reinforce guilt. If your dominant state is victimhood, the world will mirror victimhood. This isn't metaphysics, it's mechanics. Thoth taught that when you fully understand these laws, you no longer react, you create. You become an architect of your own experience, not by manipulating the outer world, but by tuning your internal one. You stop asking why things happen, and you start seeing how they happen. And that's when the real power begins. You stop being a character in a story and start being the author. Because the universe doesn't reward emotion. It responds to coherence. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. And that's why balance isn't a concept. It's the entry point to sovereignty. We were never supposed to lose this knowledge. What Thoth and the ancients knew wasn't just spiritual, it was technological. But in their time, the two were the same thing. Energy wasn't something you paid for, it was something you generated. Motion wasn't limited to physical engines, it was accessed through frequency. They weren't building temples for gods, they were building devices, systems, machines of light and stone that interacted with consciousness, like code with hardware. And when you strip away the mysticism and actually listen to what Thoth described, you start to see that what we call myth is really just memory, too advanced for us to recognize. Take the pyramids. You've been told they're tombs, monuments, maybe even cultural artifacts. But look closer. Every angle, every proportion, every alignment is perfect, down to fractions of a degree. That's not for decoration, that's for function. The Great Pyramid wasn't built as a tomb. It was built as a transducer, a device designed to collect, focus, and distribute energy. Aligned with the stars, embedded in the Earth's energy grid, it was a tuning fork between dimensions. The chambers inside weren't for burial, they were for transformation. Acoustic resonance chambers, designed to shift the frequency of the person inside. Sound was the key. Not music, but pure frequency, measured, targeted, intentional. Thoth speaks of vibration constantly because in his world, vibration was technology. Levitation wasn't science fiction, it was harmonics. You vibrate an object at the right frequency, and it loses weight. You surround it with tuned energy fields, and it moves. No cranes, no engines, just law, precision, and sound. That's why every sacred site in the world echoes the same geometries, the same ratios, the same directional alignments. Because they weren't copying each other. They were accessing the same universal template. They were syncing with the same source code. Even the so-called magic Thoth describes isn't magic at all. It's instruction. The Merkaba, for instance, the spinning field of light and consciousness that surrounds the body, isn't just some New Age symbol. It's a vehicle, an electromagnetic structure that, when activated, allows consciousness to travel between dimensions without losing coherence. Ancient initiates weren't imagining other realms, they were navigating them. And the training wasn't symbolic, it was mechanical. Visualization, breathwork, intention. These were the controls, the operating system. Because you don't access higher planes with belief. You access them with frequency alignment. And that requires discipline, not devotion, precision. Thoth also hinted at crystalline technology, devices that store and amplify consciousness. Not chips, not circuits, crystals, living data structures that resonate with intention. There are myths of the Firestone, a crystal used in Atlantis to power entire cities. Is it a myth, or is it memory distorted by time? The ancients spoke of orbs, staffs, tablets, not as relics, but as tools, interfaces, ways to manipulate energy in real time. And we lost that, not because it failed, but because we fell. Our frequency dropped, our memory dimmed, and so we started calling these tools sacred instead of functional. We stopped building with resonance and started building with ego. Today, we think technology is screens and algorithms, but real technology was never meant to separate us from ourselves. It was meant to amplify what we already are. You didn't need to escape your body, you needed to activate it. You didn't need to upload your mind, you needed to synchronize it. Thoth didn't teach technology as a replacement for the human being. He taught it as a mirror, a bridge, a way of syncing internal power with external structure. The pyramid wasn't the miracle, you were. The pyramid was just the amplifier. The tragedy isn't that this technology disappeared. It's that we stopped believing it was real. We got distracted by machines that work outside of us and forgot the machinery within. We started worshipping the stone and forgot how to shape frequency. But the knowledge isn't lost. It's just hidden behind language, behind symbolism, behind assumptions. And the moment you stop seeing Thoth's world as fantasy, the moment you let go of the idea that this is ancient poetry, it all starts clicking. Not as a belief system, but as a blueprint, a user manual, waiting for you to remember how to read it. Time is the biggest illusion ever sold, and nearly everyone bought it. You were taught it's linear, that there's a past behind you, a future ahead of you, and you're forever trapped moving in one direction between them. That illusion is so convincing, so deeply embedded into your routines and language, that most people never stop to question it. But Thoth did. He didn't just question time, he dismantled it. According to his teachings, time is not a straight line. It's a frequency field, a navigable construct, a dimension of motion, not of truth. And once you understand how it actually works, you stop being a prisoner of your past or a victim of your future. Thoth didn't write about time poetically. He wrote about it operationally. He spoke of moving through time as one walks through space, describing consciousness not as anchored, but as mobile, capable of shifting vantage points across timelines. He described past and future lives, not as fixed events in a historical record, but as parallel threads of experience accessible through resonance. To him, time wasn't a road, it was a field of potentials, and the self wasn't bound to one timeline. It was multi-expressed across many. You're not just the person you think you are today. You're also the unfinished versions of you from other lives, other possibilities, still running, still influencing you through subconscious bleed-through. This is why people have déjà vu, unexplainable talents, irrational fears, or dreams that feel more real than waking life. It's not just imagination, it's an intersection. One thread brushing against another. One version of you momentarily syncing with another version in a parallel corridor of time. The more aligned you become, the more these intersections happen. Time stops feeling like a constraint and starts becoming something you can observe, then influence. Memory is not a backward-looking function. It's a navigational tool. And most of what you call memory isn't even from this life. That's why you resonate with certain ideas, places, or symbols without any logical reason. You're not learning new information. You're remembering through frequency. Your soul stores data across dimensions. The more attuned you become, the more access you have. That's why ancient initiates practice stillness, not just for peace, but for calibration. When the mind is still, the field opens. When you drop beneath the noise of daily consciousness, the barriers between timelines thin. What you think of as downloads are actually realignments. Your higher self handing you data from the grid you already belong to. But here's what truly breaks the illusion. Time doesn't move. You do. Time isn't pulling you forward. Your consciousness is unfolding through layered potentials, collapsing possibilities into form. With every choice, every intention, every shift of focus. That means the past isn't gone, it's active. The future isn't waiting, it's responding. And the present isn't a moment, it's a point of power. Everything exists now, layered and encoded, and what you align with becomes real to you. Not because it was destined, but because your frequency called it forward. This is the real danger of unconscious living. When you believe time is something happening to you, you give away your ability to shift it. You live in reaction. You accept loops. You call repetition fate and forget that you're the one spinning the wheel. Thoth taught that cycles are only prisons if you refuse to see their pattern. The moment you see the cycle, you stand outside of it. The moment you observe time instead of obeying it, you stop being controlled by it. And that's when your evolution accelerates. That's when you stop reliving lives and start rewriting them. Time is not something you fix. It's something you remember how to move through. It bends for those who stop resisting its flow. It opens for those who stop needing control and start practicing coherence. This is why Thoth emphasized discipline, not for morality, but for precision. If you want to shift timelines, you need clarity, clean thought, pure intention, still energy, because chaos locks you into the lowest possible loop, but coherence, that opens doors you forgot were even there. So next time you feel stuck in your story, ask yourself, what if this isn't who I am, but just the version of me I'm still tuned to? What if everything I've called the future is just a frequency I haven't matched yet? That's not fantasy. That's functionality. And it's been here the whole time, hidden behind your watch, hidden in plain sight. Thoth never asked you to believe. He asked you to remember, because nothing he taught was meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be used. His entire system, scattered across the tablets and encoded in the rituals of ancient schools, was never about escaping the world. It was about transcending it from within. Ascension wasn't a reward for good behavior. It wasn't earned through suffering or devotion. It was alignment, resonance, and remembrance, measured not by how much you believe, but by how well you integrate the structure of reality into how you live, breathe, and think. Ascension, as Thoth described it, is a state of vibrational clarity. It's what happens when your frequency becomes so coherent, so stable, that you naturally rise out of the density loops that trap most of humanity. These loops, emotional reactivity, unconscious thought patterns, compulsive behaviors, aren't just bad habits. They're vibrational anchors. They keep your soul bound to the same levels of experience again and again, no matter how many lifetimes you live. You can have spiritual beliefs, read sacred texts, do yoga every morning, but if your energy is still entangled in fear, doubt, comparison, or control, you're not going anywhere. Because energy doesn't lie, it reflects. Thoth's blueprint is brutally simple. Clean your signal. Your vibration is the language of your being, and the universe responds to it with absolute precision. If you hold resentment, you experience timelines that reflect it. If you radiate gratitude, opportunities that match it begin to surface. It's not philosophy. It's the law. So the path forward is not upward in the sense of floating towards some ethereal heaven. It's inward. Stillness, intention, and awareness are the tools. When you go inward with discipline, not as escapism, but as recalibration, you begin to synchronize with the field of creation itself. And once you're in sync, you don't chase outcomes. They unfold. This is why Thoth emphasized intention. Every thought you think shapes your field. Every emotion you sit with recalibrates your direction. Most people are trying to manifest from fractured minds, scattered attention, competing desires, unconscious beliefs running beneath their words. That's why nothing sticks. Intention only works when the signal is clean. And to clean the signal, you have to observe it without judgment, without self-deception. That's what initiation was about in the ancient temples. Not ceremonies, not rituals for show. They were processes to purify the self, to strip away ego, distortion, and illusion, so that when the initiates spoke, their word became law, not through force, but through frequency. Emotion is another key most people misunderstand. You were taught to suppress it, to label it as weakness, or to be overwhelmed by it. Thoth taught something different. Emotion is power. It's energy in motion, yes, but more importantly, it's a fuel source. Love, rage, sadness, desire, these aren't obstacles to ascension, they're levers. When harnessed consciously, they can collapse timelines, accelerate growth, and break the cycle of stagnation. The key isn't to control emotion, it's to channel it, to direct it through intention and clarity, turning raw frequency into transformation. And then comes service, not the performative kind, not martyrdom, but authentic contribution. When you align your personal evolution with collective awakening, your field amplifies. You become a node of coherence in a network of distortion. That coherence is contagious. It affects others without effort. That's what the ancients meant when they said, enlightened beings change the world without moving a finger. Their presence recalibrates the field. And that presence isn't about personality. It's about purity. The more you remember what you are, the more you emit a frequency that others feel but can't explain. This is the real ascension path. Not floating into the sky, not escaping the matrix through fantasy, but becoming so aligned, so vibrationally refined, that the matrix loses its grip on you. You don't exit it by force. You outgrow it. You stop feeding it. You become immune to its pull because your resonance simply doesn't match the fear, distraction, and control it thrives on. And in that space of neutrality, of sovereignty, you begin to operate as your true self, not a reaction, not a persona, but a conscious architect of experience. So forget the robes, the rituals, the theatrics. The blueprint was never about ceremony. It was about frequency. You already have the tools. Stillness is the gateway. Intention is the compass. Emotion is the fuel. Alignment is the engine. And remembrance is the key. Ascension isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering what you were before the distortion began. Most people won't get this, not because they're incapable, but because they've been trained not to care, conditioned to roll their eyes at anything ancient, symbolic, or esoteric, distracted into numbness, entertained into obedience. And it's not their fault. The system doesn't need to hide the truth. It just needs to make sure no one takes it seriously. It's done an excellent job. You can quote Thoth, read the Emerald Tablets, wear an ankh around your neck, and still miss the point entirely. Because if it doesn't change how you think, how you act, how you see everything, you're not decoding the truth. You're just decorating your prison cell. The teachings of Thoth are not secret because they're hidden. They're secret because they require effort, stillness, discernment, the very qualities the system has designed you to avoid. You were trained to seek stimulation, not contemplation, to crave fast answers, not layered truths. So when a being like Thoth speaks in geometric language and frequency-based metaphors, most people scroll past, or worse, they laugh. But the laws he outlined don't need your belief to function. And the soul doesn't wait forever. Every time you reach for your phone instead of your thoughts, you delay. Every time you ignore that internal pull towards something deeper because it feels inconvenient or uncomfortable, you miss a signal. You were never meant to float through this life passively. You were meant to participate, to remember. But most people are running software they didn't write. Hand-me-down beliefs, second-hand goals, recycled thoughts. That's not evolution. That's stagnation in disguise. And Thoth knew this. That's why he buried his teachings in code. Not to keep people out, but to keep the unready from damaging themselves. And here's the part that stings. Readiness isn't about intelligence. It's about integrity. Are you willing to question your identity, your habits, your story? Are you willing to dissolve the version of you that the world applauded, but your soul outgrew? If not, the door stays closed. Not as punishment, but as protection. Because true knowledge, once seen, demands change. You don't get to stay the same once your eyes adjust to the truth. And that's where most people tap out. Not because they don't understand, but because they don't want to. They say they want freedom, but they don't want to stop feeding the machine that feeds their fear. They say they want truth, but only if it fits within the comfortable framework of what they already believe. Thoth didn't teach comfort. He taught transformation. That's why initiates were tested. Not for knowledge, but for capacity. Could they hold the truth without running from it? Could they look at themselves without flinching? Could they walk through the fire of deconstruction and still choose to rebuild? Because here's what most people will never understand. This isn't just about Thoth, it's about you. It's always been about you. Every metaphor, every riddle, every vibration is a mirror. Not to flatter, but to reveal. To expose where you've been operating from unconscious programming instead of cosmic law. To show you that your resistance isn't to the information, it's to the responsibility that comes with it. Because once you see the code, you can't pretend you didn't. You can't unknow the patterns. You can't unfeel the dissonance. And from that moment forward, every choice becomes a referendum on your awareness. You either choose alignment or you choose decay. There is no in between. You're either ascending or looping. And looping always feels safe until it starts to suffocate. The difference between those who awaken and those who don't isn't circumstance, it's choice. Every soul is given the same signals, the same dreams, the same moments of quiet knowing, but only some listen. Only some pause long enough to hear the whisper beneath the noise, and even fewer act on it. The truth doesn't scream, it waits. And Thoth's voice is still echoing, not in temples, not in texts, but in those strange, still moments when something inside you stirs and says, "There's more. I've been here before. I remember." This was never about Thoth. Not really. It was always about you. Thoth didn't leave behind teachings so you could idolize him. He left them so you could remember yourself. Every fragment of his knowledge, every strange symbol, every cryptic phrase, it all points back to the same place, the inner architecture you've been disconnected from. Because somewhere deep down, you already knew, you've always known, that this reality feels off, that the rules never made sense, that there's a deeper rhythm beneath all the chaos. That knowing wasn't imagination, it was a memory. You don't resonate with this because it's new. You resonate because it's familiar. The teachings of Thoth don't teach you anything you didn't already sense. They just help you find the words for what's been sitting unspoken inside you your entire life. And once you name it, you claim it. That's the shift. That's where it begins. When knowledge stops being external and starts moving through your actions, your thoughts, your energy field, that's when it becomes truth. And real truth doesn't ask for worship. It asks for embodiment. That's the difference between belief and knowing. Belief needs reinforcement. Knowing doesn't. You don't need anyone to confirm the law of gravity. You feel it, live by it, move through it unconsciously. That's how these laws work when they're truly integrated. Cause and effect, rhythm, polarity, alignment. They stop being concepts and start becoming the silent architecture of your every choice. You stop hoping the universe will save you, and you start responding to it like an engineer, like a co-creator. That's what Thoth was. Not a prophet, not a myth, a builder, an architect of consciousness. And his blueprint still works. Because it wasn't for his time, it was for this one. For the souls waking up in a world collapsing under the weight of its own lies. For the ones who don't want fantasy but function, not fluff, but frameworks, not blind faith, but tested truths. For those who are done waiting to be saved, and are ready to remember what they are. You weren't born to obey. You weren't born to loop through recycled desires and shallow distractions. You were born to create, to move reality, to raise your signal until distortion can't hold you anymore. Ascension isn't a reward. It's a side effect of clarity, of discipline, of radical honesty with yourself. The moment you stop outsourcing your truth is the moment you start rising, and not in theory, in frequency. And if something inside you knows this, if something quiet and unshakable has been nodding all along, don't ignore it. That's the real you, the one before the programming, the one that's always been watching, waiting for you to stop pretending you don't remember. You've made it this far because you're ready, ready to go deeper, to unlock what's still hidden, to receive the teachings that can't be shared openly, not here. That's why Insights Academy exists. Join the free newsletter using the link in the description, and you'll receive a digital copy of the Kabbalion. This isn't a bonus, it's a key. Don't miss it. Because this path doesn't end here. The real work starts now. In your breath, your habits, your thoughts, your alignment. Thoth wasn't a beginning or an end. He was a reminder that you are the gatekeeper, the signal, the architect. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it.